Welcome and bienvenidos to Cultural Capacity, a podcast sponsored by Educator Aid Incorporated, where our team is committed to supporting individuals and organizations on their journey of self-aware leadership, emotional wellness, and development of effective cross-cultural communications. Let's get ready to explore the following topics together by biting into them with little pieces that go really deep to examine ourselves. Topics like bias, culture, cultural psychology, cultural neuroscience, diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial equity. Our episodes are all 10 minutes or less and intended to serve as introspective tools for you as the individual leader or the teams that you're leading. Be sure to check out the links in the podcast description where you can sign up for our free quarterly subscription, Better Community, as well as tap in and submit your questions via the voice message button. Let's get ready to learn together. Hola y bienvenido. I am Justine Gonzalez, your host for the Cultural Capacity Podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Remember, we try to keep our episodes about 15 minutes or less to really hit you with a deep dive with one particular concept. And the purpose of this podcast is not only for your personal development and growth. We encourage you to share this resource as it is structured over time for you to actually kick off perhaps a team meeting, a staff professional learning session with one of these episodes. Or maybe you send it out for pre-work. Hey, listen to this. Then we're going to talk about this and how this looks at our particular organization. So keep that in mind. Sharing is caring. And we hope that you're finding value in these episodes. I'm so glad to be back. If I'm being really transparent, it's been a very, very busy quarter one and beginning of quarter two this year of 2022. And I want to put that out there and just share it in vulnerability. This was the first Mother's Day. My mother passed away. May she rest in freedom. But she passed away this past January. So, if I'm being honest, this past weekend was pretty difficult. So, I didn't quite make my timeline for my typical cadence here. And please bear with us too. I do know that there's definitely some very interested leaders. I appreciate you amidst the busyness of just the ebbs and flows of any given year. But I know that there's many leaders out there who have an interest in being featured on this podcast. So I ask that you continue to be patient. We are still considering how that format will look and leaning towards extended episodes where I will actually interview the guests at times, partly because I made an attempt to outreach, right? And you all know I'm big on communications. In fact, that's something that I'm going to talk a little bit about today and in this episode, but I am just being transparent. I don't sugarcoat if I'm trying to figure something out. And I appreciate those of you who have given me feedback. And also, I received that. Many of you have said, no, I like listening to you. Okay, wonderful. And I like to share. I like to share with others. So if you are interested, drop me a voice note if you have a particular topic. But please keep in mind, if you are a leader who has submitted their interest that you are interested in guesting at some point, whether that be hosting your own episode or being a guest, and I interview you, please know that you are not forgotten. I actually have an entire spreadsheet of your names and emails. So please know that as we grow, we are very transparent at Educator Aid Incorporated about our growing pains at times and what that means and why there might be delays in putting some things out. So without any more talk, we're going to dive in to talk about what does it mean to belong. And I'm struck by this data point I want to kick off with. In case you don't know, I did co-author a book in 2021 that was recently published and actually made it to the top 100 on the education charts on Amazon in 2021 when we released. But my co author, Augustin Amua, and myself wrote a text called The Social Capital Quotient. And in our framework, there's actually 4 elements that all work together. So this is just book 1 of 4 of this series that we released. The framework actually has 4 different elements with multiple indicators. This first element we focused on, though, in book 1 is about cultivating your leadership legacy, essentially, and through this concept of beginning with retention in mind. So often, I have found in working with numerous organizations over the years that retention is just an afterthought. And that often leaves us on the defensive as a way to deal through a reactive lens. And so when we think about the impact of any type of leader staying or the ripple effect really of a leader leaving, they're both invaluable for the long-term trajectory for any organization. And so one of the things I know that's top of mind for so many of us and many of you that listen to this podcast is the great resignation. And am I doing what I'm really passionate about? And one of the things that Augie and myself found in some of our own research is that intergenerational communication is actually a really, really big factor we're finding as we continue to conduct research. We are finding that is a huge factor of whether or not people feel like they belong in the workplace. And so, simply defined, intergenerational communication really lays out how individuals across age groups or cohorts, such as millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, Gen Z, etc., how we communicate, resolve conflict, how we connect socially, and ultimately how we collaborate. And so, one of the threads of truth that I can say is truly present in every generation is this: we all want to feel like we belong. And so, one thing that happens in this human experience that we're each a part of on earth is that we we find over time people don't leave organizations when they feel like they belong. So, and that might sound and look and feel different ways for different people, right? But sometimes that can be communicated as I feel valued, I feel supported, I feel like my voice is heard or valued. I'm compensated financially for my worth. I am asked consistently about my opinion or my input. Or the people I report to or who evaluate me, they know who I am. They know what drives me, what's important to me, and essentially what makes me tick, quote unquote. So of course, obviously that might show up in different ways for different people, but when you hear people talk about, we have a morale issue, or we can't keep anybody, or we have a retention issue, I'm gonna first share this note. This is a research note from 2019 and an article released by the Harvard Business Review. And the quote reads like this, and this was an article written by Carr, Kellerman, Reese, and Robichaux, if you decide to look this up. But 40%, what they found was approximately 40% of people do not feel connected in their workplace. And so the direct quote I'm going to read you from this article is this: if workers feel like they belong, companies reap substantial bottom line benefits. So, if for no other motivator than the bottom line, here it is: high belonging was linked to a whopping 56% increase in job performance, a 50% drop in turnover risk, and a 75% reduction in sick days. For a 10,000 person company, this would roughly result in annual savings of more than $52 million. And so I just want to put this out there, right? That we need to talk about what it means to belong, because belonging for me might not look the same or feel the same or require the same inputs as the person I'm sitting next to at a weekly team meeting. So I want to put this out there as a topical point of what does it mean to you to feel like you belong? And I put that out there as a challenge for you to first start within self and examine, are you experiencing those things you name? Start with yourself. What actually makes you feel like you belong? And don't even think about your workplace, your schools that you've attended, your church, any organization you're involved in. No, just think about yourself. What gives you a sense of belonging? And after you've done that, then you can do a side by side. Do I actually feel these things at my organization? So just remember, people leave organizations more times than not because they feel like they don't belong in some way, shape, or form. And we cannot afford not to examine, what are people experiencing when they are part of our organizations, and how are we examining this question together with our colleagues. So I just wanted to drop you that quick note, and thank you again for listening. Thank you again for sharing, and thank you for all your love and support. We really appreciate you. Let's continue to get compassionately curious together. Take care. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today and tuning in to this episode of the Cultural Capacity Podcast. We're glad you're here. If you found value in this episode, be sure to share out with your social networks. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review on Apple. You know, all the things. Finally, don't forget to take advantage of our free quarterly subscription that is in our podcast description. The link is right there. It's called Better Community, and we would love to have you join us there too. Until next time, take care.